Hey, everybody, let's welcome in Mike Niziolek of the Roanoke Times, covers Virginia Tech. Mike, how's it going?
Good. How are you, Chris?
Good. So both programs face each other this week. A lot of people obviously know about where Miami's at, people watching this. Virginia Tech, 5-5, 3-3 in the ACC, both teams not where they want to be with the same exact record. I think looking from afar, a lot of Miami fans are a little curious. We hear about Virginia Tech and their struggles. Um, what can you pinpoint? Why is Virginia Tech where they're at this point in this season in particular?
Mostly comes down to the quarterback. Braxton Burmeister was kind of the guy that they picked at the end of last season. Let a couple guys go to the transfer portal, and the decision kind of didn't work out. He's kind of struggled in the passing game, hasn't been able to kind of get things going downfield, and this team is really struggled offensively. Defensively, they've been inconsistent at times. Their numbers are overall pretty good, but they've had some letdowns. But I mean, really, the struggles are mostly on the offense at this point. And why this season has been disappointing for Virginia Tech.
And just how about Justin Fuente, sixth year, starts off strong, wins the division the first year, 10-win season, 9 the second, and then it's just dropped off. And I think it's the same thing with Miami. Like, you're hoping for a positive direction in the program. Manny Diaz only in his third year, but it's a step back from where they were a year ago. Maybe can you Virginia Tech, a proud program. They won 10 win seasons from 2004 to 2011, 8 straight years with at least 10. And then it's just not been the same consistency. And I know you touched on this season in particular with maybe their struggles, but what are some keys for Virginia Tech getting back to the level that their program has been in the past? Where do they need to, where's the biggest corrections need to be made as a program?
Well, I mean, I think recruiting, obviously, I don't think they've recruited the last couple of years at a high enough level to sort of be at that, be at that 10 win, mark. I think, ironically, the recruiting class they got coming in as of right now is better. We'll see if that kind of stays with it, if they make some changes here in the next couple of weeks. But, I think that's one area. And I think, when you talk about quarterbacks, that they haven't had. Gerard Evans was the guy with that when they came in, and he left early, and then they really haven't had a guy that they've been able to kind of get behind for multiple seasons. I mean, Hendon Hooker looked like he might be able to do that, but he leaves, and so I think that turnaround there has kind of hurt them, that they haven't been able to get a guy for you look up at Virginia with Brennan Armstrong, that they've had for a couple of years, been able to develop him, and now are kind of reaping the benefits from that. Virginia Tech hasn't been able to do that, and I think that's hurt them. And obviously, the turnover on defense with Bud Foster leaving after the 2019 season, he retires, and you're kind of starting over a little bit on defense. Justin Hamilton came in, and he's a young coordinator. I think he does have a bright future, but I mean, there's going to be some bumps in the road there for him. And I think that this was just kind of an awkward time to sort of have all that going at once.
Kind of just reviewing a little bit with where Miami's at real quick. They're coming off that 31-28 loss to Florida State. A lot of disappointing things in that game. I think for the most part, Miami's up 28-20 in the fourth quarter, and a lot of fans are having a hard time with, they weren't able to seal that win. A lot of coaching decisions, a lot of coaching essentially mistakes on how they let that one slip away. And Manny Diaz has been on thin ice for most, once you get that fourth loss in a season, they won 3 in a row. So you feel like there's positive momentum, and not a good Florida State team. Everyone knows their struggles that they've had. And Miami, clearly not a good team either, losing to that team. And it's very interesting with where these programs are at 5-5. It's either going to be a 5-7 season, maybe they go 6-6, 7, one of these teams are trying to get some momentum heading into the offseason, and Miami's trying to, Duke, they got Duke next week, and obviously we'll get into the Duke game with how Virginia Tech played in that one. But Miami's looking for some momentum, some positive momentum in their quarterback situation. I think what you saw against Florida State, Tyler Van Dyke is looked good at times, and then looked, it really struggled at times too. So it'll be very interesting how these teams finish. This one I feel like is key for both teams. Last Miami home game, Let's get into what we saw with Virginia Tech against Duke. Had a chance to see that one 48-17 win against Duke. And I know Duke has struggled. They're getting blown out almost every ACC game they played in. But Virginia Tech's coming off that 17-3 loss to Boston College. I know the quarterback change, and maybe that's what you'll point to as maybe the biggest difference. But I thought Virginia Tech looked good again against a struggling Duke team. What was your kind of overall takeaways from that Duke game?
Well, if you guys got Duke coming up, that'll give you some momentum because Duke
Right.
is a very bad football team. No, but they played the run really well. They tackled really well. I mean, look, Mateo Duran's a really good football player. They held him to a season low 33 yards, I think it was. So anytime you could do that, I think you're happy. And so, defensively, like I said, inconsistent at times. In Boston College, they let them run for over 250 yards, and so there was those struggles. So I think that was kind of a pivotal area. For Virginia Tech to kind of bounce back, and I think they'll need to be on point against the run again this week. In terms of offense, yeah, I mean, look, Duke is not good. So, I mean, you kind of take it as a big asterisk, but Virginia Tech was able to run the ball nicely, had Raheem Blackshear and Keyshawn King get going. Keyshawn King's a Florida guy too, who hadn't scored in a couple of years and finally got him going. So that was kind of a big difference in that game where they had some different options in the run game that were all kind of firing on all cylinders.
Just and looking at Virginia Tech, obviously, I think a lot of people saw that North Carolina game to start it off, and we've seen at times Virginia Tech play well, and obviously they've dropped some games too, kind of similar opponents. So Virginia, just looking at some division stuff, Virginia Tech beats Georgia Tech. I just mentioned North Carolina loses to Pitt. Game kind of got away from them there, but I guess when Virginia Tech's operating the way they'd like, what are they doing well? Essentially, maybe the biggest keys for Miami as they face Virginia Tech in this one.
Yeah, I think. I mean, it starts with their offensive line has been uneven, and they haven't been able to get push against teams when they've lost. They're averaging below 4 yards a carry. I think it starts there. They're able to kind of get some push up front that allows unpacks the box a little bit because teams. Look, it's no surprise what Virginia Tech's going to try to do. Their teams are going to try to say, beat us in the passing game, beat us making plays down the field, beat our corners, and if they can kind of get some yards running and lessen the pressure on Braxton Burmeister, create some space, that does help. I think their receivers need to kind of make some of those plays one-on-one against corners. That's kind of been a consistent issue where they, facing man coverage. They've struggled, and so they're going to get that all year long, and that's kind of they know what they're going to face, and they have to sort of beat it. And I think that's sort of kind of the game that's what it is every week, basically. And so, it helped having Trey Turner back healthy. He's their top receiver, and he missed the Boston College game. He was back on the field, and even though I think he only had one catch, his presence kind of helps because he's kind of that big play threat, their most consistent guy. But so, yeah, I think all those things kind of combine where they need to kind of free up a little bit because teams are really focusing on the run with them because they've struggled so much in the passing game.
One of the things that stood out to me with the passing game with Braxton was last game in particular against Duke is, he was finding guys that were open. He was getting the ball downfield a little bit. Obviously, that's like you said, it's not been consistent with him, but he was able to do that. And Miami's coming off a game when they faced Jordan Travis, not known for being a good passer. He goes 18 of 26 for 274, has that 60-yard play right there at the end. Miami has looked vulnerable against quarterbacks this year, and they faced good quarterbacks. Like, we've seen this with the ACC, and Miami obviously faced a couple good ones non-conference, but and Braxton brings kind of that dual threat ability that maybe not, not the runner that Jordan is, but he has the ability to run the ball. What are your thoughts on Braxton? You touched on him a little bit earlier, but just overall with him, and obviously, and also speak on his health, how he's feeling, maybe what to expect or what he's kind of dealing with right now.
Yeah, he's dealing with kind of an upper body rib injury. And so he's not healthy. He's not 100%, I guess I should say. He's healthy enough to play, not 100%. So, he's banged up. He came out again last week for a series. because he got hit, took a hit there on that chest area, that midsection. That getting against Boston College, the injury, got aggravated when he fouled the ball kind of awkwardly. So if Miami's going to get to him and hit him, and he could come out again. I mean, they're kind of that's kind of the deal right now. They just sort of are going to roll with him, and if he gets banged up, that's kind of part and parcel. So, but he is going to run. He's not afraid to pull it down. I mean, he's like you said, a dual threat. They don't run a lot of designed runs with him, especially with him being injured. But what happens is once there's not things open downfield, he'll scramble. So, Hendon Hooker a couple years ago against Miami, that's how they were running him, like 15 to 20 times a game. That's not what they do at Braxton. He'll run 10 times, but a lot of those are just sort of when plays break down. But tough kid, absolutely, just hasn't played very well this year. But he's going to try to gut it out. I would expect him to play, even though, like I said, he's not 100%. But Miami can pressure him. They certainly could see the backup for a little bit on Saturday.
Yeah, and that's obviously Miami's plan each and every week. It's something that it's one of their point of emphasis with their defense, with their defensive line in particular, getting upfield, tackles for loss, try to apply pressure, a lot of blitzes, things like that. They're definitely trying to apply pressure. Obviously, I expect much of the same point of emphasis in this one, and obviously with Braxton being a little dinged up there, they're going to definitely try to exploit that and try to get to him as much as possible, even more. You touched on Trey Turner a little bit. He kind of ranks as one of the top 10 receivers in the ACC with his yards per catch is impressive. I think he's top 5 there. Kind of talk about what he brings to the table. And then also, you talked about, or Robinson had a good game coming off that good one, smaller receiver compared to Turner. You touched on King, but just the guys in the passing game to kind of look for, starting with Trey.
Yeah, Tavion is a kid where, too, you got to watch out for him in the punt return game. I think he now leads the league and maybe the FBS in punt return average. So he's a guy that's been really good at a bounce back year in that area. Really capable, in the slot kind of guy. Turner obviously is your big play threat. They go down to him. They want to get him the ball as much as they can. They've struggled at times this year. A couple weeks ago against Georgia Tech, he had a career game. And that's what they'd like to see more of, where he's in that 7 to 8 catch range. They just haven't been able to do it. Outside of that, you're looking at the running backs. Raheem Blackshear out of the backfield. They got Keyshawn King, a nice long throw. But their receivers, those two are kind of the guys. They don't have a lot of depth right now that they've been able to establish. But beyond those two, and they do like to use their tight ends and running backs out of the passing game. James Mitchell got hurt in the opener. He would have been really good for them. They have Nick Gallo, guy that's caught a couple passes. You got to just kind of watch out for those guys because they'll roll them out and try to get them open, try to get them involved.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting just kind of looking at Virginia Tech. You touched on Trey a little bit. It kind of feels like it's just each and every week thing with the ACC teams where the receiver at the top of the depth chart, their top receiver, maybe 1 or 2 is pretty good, and then the depth kind of drops off a little bit. It kind of seems like this each and every week with just ACC teams. But they certainly, Trey has been a proven target, a guy that can make plays for them. Raheem Blackshear in the running game. I thought that, again, we're taking all this with a grain of salt going against a Duke team, but I thought his touchdown run looked good going off that left side. I thought it was interesting formation. So they go 3 receivers, shotgun, and then they runs to the left, even though they have 2 receivers to the right. So I thought it was a good play design. I think it's going to be something that Miami has to pay attention to because it obviously didn't necessarily look run, and he was able to reel it off. Your thoughts on maybe Blackshear, kind of what his running style, what he brings to the team, and obviously running game is important for them.
Yeah, well, North Carolina really had a hard time locating him out of the backfield. I think teams have kind of scouted them better and, have an understanding of what they try to do with them. But he's like that, where they're going to use him in a lot of different ways. He can line up outside in the slot as well. Hasn't done that as much because they've used him more running the ball, but they like a lot of screens to him. The throwback screen, one of them didn't work against Duke and another one did. They do like that. And then a guy that has come along, Malachi Thomas is another running back too that they got to watch out for. He had back-to-back 100-yard games. He's a true freshman that they've been kind of given the ball a lot to. Wasn't as effective against Duke, but didn't need to be because, Raheem and Keyshawn were playing so well. So, Raheem's kind of their kind of all-purpose kind of guy where they're going to try to get him the ball in any way they can. And he's been running the ball better. It's funny with Malachi coming on. Justin Fuente said that's really challenged Raheem and made him kind of be more effective with the carries he does get. And he has been better the last few weeks in terms of really being productive with the carries he does get.
And yeah, Raheem has kind of been he's definitely one to pay attention to, averaging almost 6 yards a carry against ACC teams. Again, Miami's been vulnerable against, essentially everything that, teams have scored 30 points in every game in the ACC against Miami. So even though Virginia Tech's not coming in with his known potent attack, they've got some weapons and definitely try to play to their identity. Defensively with Virginia Tech, it's very interesting to me to kind of see where they rank in the ACC, kind of middle of the pack and against the yards in ACC games, but second in scoring defense. And it's lopsided. They're much better against the pass than the run. They're right there at the top against the pass and in all the statistical categories, including efficiency. What are you seeing with the defense against the pass and against the run?
Yeah, they're thin on the defensive line, defensive front, defensive tackle. I mean, they're got a rotation of like 4 guys right now, and I think they tire out as the game goes on a little bit. Defensive end, they're thin as well. So I think that's part of it. I also think their secondary is just a little more talented in terms of they got really good corners and Jermaine Waller and Dorian Strong. Jermaine Waller had 3 pass interference penalties against Duke, so that was kind of a first. But it shows kind of that their mentality is being aggressive, right? They got some safeties that are a little younger, but they've played decent enough in most games. But really and their linebacker Dax Highfield kind of described it last week. They've kind of been a bend don't break defense, where they've allowed teams to kind of get down the field, but forcing field goals. They were good against Duke. They held them to a couple of field goals attempts in their first 2 attempts in the red zone this week, and one of them missed. So they've held teams off the scoreboard a little bit. They haven't allowed 30 points a game like you said Miami has. That's kind of, I think, been the difference where they will allow teams to get big chunks of yards at times. It's the teams that have taken advantage and scored that have won. But not every team has been able to. So they're pretty good on third down too. That has helped in third and long situations in particular. They go to a dime with kind of like 5 defensive backs, and that's been a problem for opposing teams because, like I said, they bring an extra corner, and Amani Chapman off the bench is a pretty good corner too. So that's kind of I think where teams get into problems. Third and long, have to pass, and that's hard. But against the run, it's been the opposite. They've struggled.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that was working well during Miami's 3-game winning streak, and it kind of showed up against Florida State eventually. But Charleston Rambo has been a really good threat for Miami at wide receiver, 4th-year junior. People have been talking about him on our message boards if he'll be back next year. I've said it there. I'll say it again. I do not expect him to return to Miami next year. I think he'll move on. Right now he's 4th in the ACC in receiving yards at 955. Just having a really impressive year. And he kind of identifies what's been going on with Miami. Again, slow start for him personally, and then gets it going. And I think that's what all teams in the ACC are finding when they face Miami. And I'm sure Fuente and his staff are noticing this, that look, even if you get Miami down, or if it doesn't, if it looks like the game is going one way, Miami's going to keep coming. I know it's something that the Miami coaching staff is trying to pride itself on, and that they're going to play hard. They're going to keep coming, even if it doesn't look good early. And certainly, they've got to generate results with that. You don't get all the credit for just playing hard. They've got to get these results. And Mike, I know we started off the show, which is kind of with where Virginia Tech is as a program. I touched on a little bit with Miami. Just, I guess the big thing is let's talk about maybe the end of the season for Virginia Tech. Can they get this thing rolling, this positive momentum to end the year? And then just kind of as a program, just where they're at. Can they get back in the near future to essentially winning the division, really competing for that division title, get back to that 10-win season? Can they get back to that anytime soon? Do you see it?
I don't know. I mean, fans are hoping. I mean, they're demanding some changes if things don't get better. I don't know. They got Virginia Tech has one win away from bowl eligibility. Virginia, obviously, the question mark for them will be in the finale if Brennan Armstrong's healthy. They're not the same team without him. They finished 7-5. That's a 2-win improvement from last year. And as bad as the season's been, it's kind of funny that they'd be sitting there and now what do? You fire the coach after kind of saying, it's not about wins, but you're 2 wins better. And, it's such a tough situation because I think it's going across the coastal right now is that everybody's sort of up and down. And I think what you're seeing is sort of an impact of the transfer portal and all the attrition and from last year from the COVID season. And so it's sort of like, do you hit the big reset button knowing that you're going to have a even bigger rebuild than you would if you just made changes within the coaching staff? And so I think that's kind of what they're balancing. And I think it's easier if they lose both these games, and you say 5-7 and, you kind of, obviously you didn't hit what you want, but, I just think it's funny that, you're still even in the coastal. I mean, Pitt loses both their games and this is wide open, so it's just kind of a weird year for the coastal where I don't think anybody's very happy, except for Pitt. It just, a lot of bad football has been played. And Virginia Tech has, 3 plays away from being, at the top. They've lost 3 close games where you flip those around and this team's thrilled with where they're at. So they're a lot closer than their record looks, but, you can't argue that the fact that it was a very disappointing season for Justin Fuente.
It's it feels like a lot of the same things you're saying. I feel like you can relate to the Miami program with where they're at, 5-5. And I feel like the administration is going to have a tough decision. And with what they want to do with their future. And Manny Diaz reportedly has a 5-year contract. This is year 3. Do you let him come back year 4? Do you extend him? I know that'd be crazy for Miami's fans, but what do you do with Miami going to, if he does come back to his 4th season? And I say that just because the way coaching contracts work, you can definitely get recruited against if you're not showing back in the future. Or does this thing completely fall flat? Miami finishes, like you said, that for Virginia Tech, do they go 5-7? Although I think if a loss to Duke at this point would be very tough to see.
You get fired. Yeah, you lost to Duke should be a fireable offense at this point.
Yeah, so I think that it's just very interesting. So you go 6 and what if you go 6-6 and lose the bowl game? And I think the big thing, and I find this all the time with administrations, is look, it's easy to make easy decisions when it's a no-brainer, right? When it's, look, the team's terrible. There's absolutely no hope for the future. But right there on that fringe, you have to make tough decisions. And I feel like that's where Miami is going to be at. And I think one of the things Manny Diaz is trying to sell, and I think the fans are starting to notice it, is all these young guys are starting to make plays. So they're trying to feel like that's the foundation. Maybe they can be better next year. But I think that there's just been a lot of disappointing losses for Miami over these 3 years under Diaz. I think it's hard for fans to see how things are going to be better based on
I think one difference
results.
In Miami's situation is that he is only in year 3. With Fuente, it is year 6. And there's some argument to be made that they did lose Bud Foster and that kind of set things back. But, when you're doing it every 3 years, and especially now with the portal, I just think you're going to get so far behind that you're constantly fighting back the numbers and you're going to, it's a cycle. And so I think the difference with Miami is that is a short amount of time, right? Fuente has had 6 years, arguably. I mean, these are all his players. This is his team. You can't say that this isn't, the guys he brought in, right? So I think that is a big difference where, teams, when you kind of get into that 5-year 6 mark, they have to sort of think, this is what it is, right? Because this is your team, this is where you are. So I think there is some argument to be made too, though, for Virginia Tech as well. Like, if you're going to finish 1 win better and it didn't matter, like, why didn't you make the move last year, right? Like, if Miami's on the fence and if he doesn't, if he doesn't get 10 wins, is he going to get fired anyway? So maybe just make the move now, right? Like, because, are you setting yourself up? Virginia Tech last year just set himself up to do this just 1 year down the road and waste a year. I think
and we've seen that, right, in college football, where teams, okay, after 2 or 3 games, whatever it might be, they let them go the next year. Miami dealt with it with the Al Golden era. So in year 3, they gets 9 wins, drops in year 4, then year 5, they bring him back and then they fire him midway through the year. I think that's the thing, is Manny Diaz, if they bring him back for next year, is it going to feel like he's coaching for his job week in and week out? I don't think
that's what it was here at this beginning of September. It's miserable, right? Like they beat North Carolina, everything's great. They lose to West Virginia, and then it's like throw them out, and it's like then that's the rest of the season every game. And I tell you, it's not fun for the players. I mean, it's been a long season for them, and I guess you're kind of seeing into your future maybe a little bit with Virginia Tech, because yeah, it makes for a September where, like, if you're not perfect, everybody's going to be just like, he's got to go. And now teams are making these changes because of the early signing day. Miami and Virginia Tech have been the exception this year mid-season, right? And so, yeah, it's not fun. It's not. It's a real. I think that does make it should be on an athletic director's mind. Like, are you going to be able to withstand the up and downs of a okay September to try to get through the conference portion of the schedule? Because every week it is like you lose, and it's like they should get rid of them.
Yeah, and and just kind of really again looking early on, Miami plays at Texas A&M next September.
There you go. That's the perfect get. Yeah.
Right. So, and then are they going to win? That kind of thing. Looking ahead, they play at Clemson. ACC schedule not been released, but obviously a tough one there, especially if it's early. But yeah, it's very interesting with where Miami is at with its program. I know people are disappointed. As they should be. You're looking at another 5-loss season for Miami. That's 2 out of 3 for Manny Diaz. They go 8-3 last year. So you're trying. You've always, when you're not winning as many games as the year before, you're always going to face heat, and that's where Miami's at. And what's been interesting is you touched on kind of not fun for players with the poor start. So Miami goes 2-4. Very disappointing start to the season, and then real injuries are happening to the quarterback, to the they lose 2 running backs they felt like they could bank on. So now you're trying to dig out of holes, dealing with injuries. Obviously, guys still need, Bubba Bolden was one of their key guys, and certainly guys needed to play better that were in there. But they've been trying to navigate this thing, and I felt like Miami it'll be interesting with Miami because, again, 2-4, if they do beat Virginia Tech, they beat Duke, say they win their bowl game 8-5, and now you're talking winning 6 out of your last 7 to finish the season. There is some positive momentum, regardless of how you got there or the disappointing start. You always try to evaluate the season in totality. Just a very interesting spot. Miami could very well lose this game. So now you're going 5-6, Duke 6-6, and maybe you lose the bowl game because Miami's been losing bowl games. So it's very interesting with where they're at. It's certainly teetering on thin ice, like for Manny Diaz, and just not at a good point with the program. Just losses piling up. And like you said, it's year 3, but fans are expecting more. And like you said, I think you said it, and a lot of people will have noticed the Coastal's not great. So for a team not to be able to take advantage, I think people are looking at what's going on at Clemson. So you're not thinking that this is a strong ACC year. Miami's never won the ACC. So a lost season, disappointing season with so many returners. So, when you have high expectations, returning players, you've got to perform. And again, you touched on close losses. Miami's had them too. And it's like, it really is a cutthroat business. You've got to win games. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah. And I mean, no one's going to feel bad for somebody making, $5 million and has, all that money for buyouts. You're going to get, Joseph Fuente gets fired. He gets $10 million. So, I mean, it's like, that's a nice little goodbye present. So, they'll do okay. But yeah, no, it is crazy just in terms of, I think Miami and Virginia Tech both are kicking themselves because they have veteran teams. Like you said, their schedules set up well. A lot of these teams are, like I said, Syracuse and Boston College, Virginia Tech lost to are terrible teams. Those are, those wins alone probably are enough to, keep his job. And they didn't get it done. So, and, they didn't score a touchdown against Boston College. So, I don't think anybody, I think for Virginia Tech, they know where everything went wrong. It's just, just a bad season.
Yeah. So, Mike, I appreciate your time. This rivalry has had a lot of really good games, really intense games. I know both fan bases are hoping their programs get back to that in the very near future, being one of the top teams in the ACC, ranked all the time, playing in big games and having good teams, good performances. So we'll see how Saturday goes. It'll be interesting. Miami's last home game.
Well, an appearance on the Military Bowl is on the line, right? That
there you go.
Get any bigger than that. So
Miami has gotten used to all those bowl games, those types of bowl games, and not winning them either.
ACC bowl games. Those are it's players desperate to get there.
Fans as well. All right, Mike, take care.
Thanks, Chris.